Hi, everyone. We have with us today for this guest lecture Christophe Jaffrelot, who is an eminent scholar of Indian politics. He's the author of several books and various other research publications. He's a senior research fellow at CNRS in Paris and a professor of Indian politics and sociology at King's India Institute in London. In the past, he was also a global scholar at Princeton University, a visiting professor at Columbia University, at Yale, and at SAIS at Johns Hopkins. So, welcome, Christoph, and thank you for giving us the chance to speak with you today and to hear your views.
Thank you for inviting me.
Okay, so let me just jump in. And this is in the context of the political environment within India. And before we zoom into India, I'd ask you to help us sort of contextualize in a slightly broader sense, within the Indian subcontinent, and how would you compare and contrast the recent rise of Hindutva ideology in India to ongoing religio-political developments in adjoining Pakistan and Bangladesh?
So I can't say for Bangladesh because I'm not at all an expert, but Pakistan is a place I'm visiting as frequently as India. And I would say between these two countries, there are similarities as well as differences. First of all, in terms of similarities, in both cases, we see that politicians played an important role in the rise of communalism. In Pakistan, Islamism started to gain momentum when Zulfikar Ali Bhutto started to play the religious card in the 1970s to win elections. And similarly, BJP instrumentalized Hinduism in the context of election campaigns, as evident from its use of the Ayodhya affair in the 80s and subsequently. Another similarity has to do with the way that there are groups which are not playing the electoral game, but a purely ideological game. Jamaat Islami on one side, RSS on the other side, are very similar in that regard. They work on society. They work to transform society deeply from below. Education is an important area for them. So that's an interesting comparison as well. And last but not least, and possibly most importantly, in both cases, you have new sacred red lines. After some time, in both countries, we've seen points of no return in some regards. For instance, in Pakistan, a point of no return has been reached with the blasphemy law. Nobody will dare to undo these blasphemy laws. In India, we have a very similar trajectory with cow protection representing an equally sacred red line, I think. Well, differences, a couple of them. In the case of Pakistan, foreign countries played a very important role in the promotion of Islamism. Saudi Arabia played a major role to counter Iran, among other things, as early as the 80s. In India, you can't say that any foreign country played a similar role. In fact, foreign countries were involved in a different way. Pakistan helped the BJP to win supporters because of attacks coming from Pakistan, not because of the way Pakistan supported any player in the domestic game. Last but not least, the Hindu nationalist terrorist groups like Abhinav Bharat have never been as sophisticated and as strong as the Pakistan-supported jihadi groups. First of all, because they've never been supported by the state, and that's another important difference.
That's fascinating, and I wish at some other time we'll delve into the situation in Pakistan, but I'll force myself to keep the conversation focused on India. And let me ask you this. How do you compare and sort of, how do you compare what's going on right now with the communal problem in India under the BJP, particularly under the Modi government, and contrast it to sort of the historical context, right? Like, I mean, pre-partition, partition, and then importantly, after India became an independent modern country in its current form, the role of the Congress. So, in other words, the BJP's articulation of the Hindutva ideology and comparing and contrasting it to the Congress's position. And of course, we know that, even Gandhi's assassination and its linkage to the RSS. So, I mean, maybe you could touch on that, but then look at how the Congress itself dealt with this very sizable Muslim population that had remained in India after the partition of the Indian subcontinent.
Yeah, I will not go back too far in history because we have little time, but if we try to understand today's situation by looking at the previous decades, the most recent decades, we can certainly say that communalism started to rise in the 1980s in India, partly because of the Congress and partly because of the way Indira Gandhi, in the first place, communalized Indian politics in this decade, the 1980s. She's back in January 1980. She's assassinated in October 1984. And in these 4 years, we have seen Assam in flames with Nelly in 1983. We've seen Punjab in flames, and partly because of the way she supported Khalistanis against the Akalis. That's one of the games she played. And subsequently, Rajiv also indulged in some communalization of politics. And the Shabano affair, for instance, in the mid-1980s, is a very important turning point to my mind, because it reflected the Congress attempt at wooing the conservative Muslim leaders, and it gave fodder to the BJP. That's something, by the way, L.K. Advani himself told me when I interviewed him a few years ago. And Rajiv Gandhi subsequently launched his 1989 election campaign from Faizabad near Ayodhya, and he referred to this sacred site. So they played with communal identities at the expense of secularism. But that was tactical. That was to gain the vote of communities one after the other. It did not result in the promotion of one group. It is not an attempt at promoting majoritarianism. It's a very different way to refer to identity politics. These leaders, Congress leaders, never tried to transform minorities into second-class citizens as we see today. But the point remains that certainly the ground was partly prepared by Congress.
I see. And do you think that the Hindutva's public appeal lies in its unification of Hindus and the othering of Muslims? Or does Hindutva in its current form, whether it openly acknowledges it or not, also enable discrimination along the lines of class and caste? And if that may be the case, I mean, given the situation of the Dalits, for instance, how do these latter tensions play out, and how does the BJP attempt to reconcile with these frictions?
Well, Hindutva in its new incarnation, as you say, can be called Modidva. It's really a new version of Hindutva, because Narendra Modi in contrast to its predecessors at the helm of BJP, combines Hindu nationalism and populism, and a very clear personification of power, and the result is national populism. Modidva is a version of national populism, something we find elsewhere. Hungary's Orban, Turkey's Erdogan, and so on. And these populists always try to unite the people in order to maintain some social status quo. Populists say, we are one, and I am the incarnation of the unity of the people. I am you. I am the nation. Forget your caste, forget your class, think that you are Hindu first. And the other is not within the Hindu community, but it's outside. It's the Muslim, and I'm there to protect you from this other. So this discourse gained momentum in India in the first years of the 21st century in reaction to Mandal. And I would say Mandal 1 as well as Mandal 2. Mandal 2 being quotas in the administration, in the public sector. Mandal 1 being, Mandal 2 being reservations, quotas in the education system. Mandal 1 referring to reservations for the lower caste in the administration and public sector. When these quotas were given to plebeians, low caste people, upper caste, middle class people were looking for a repertoire that could counter the emancipation of the lower caste. So Hindutva was very convenient, because you could tell the lower caste, don't look at yourself as the enemy of the Brahmins or other upper caste. Look at yourself as a Hindu first. And that was a way to diffuse tensions within the Hindu society. And it worked, because upper caste we're losing ground after 1990 and even more after the early 2000s. And they were losing political positions. Many chief ministers were from the lower caste at that time. Many members of parliament came from these caste groups as well. And if you look at the social profile of today's governments at the state level, at the national level, and if you look at the profile of the members of parliament, you can see that upper caste are back in a big way. So they have succeeded in diffusing what I have called a silent revolution, and there is something like a counter-revolution at work. So there are tensions, certainly within caste groups, but much less than before in the sense that you can certainly say that today, in the name of Hindutva, religious identity prevails over caste identity and even class identity to some extent.
So in that sense, that kind of othering has produced benefit, majoritarianism, and then the political capital that enables. Let me shift gears a bit and ask you for your opinion regarding Rahul Gandhi's recent activism, right? And his famous line there that in the bazaar of hatred, I am opening up a shop of love, and then him sort of going on this, on this march, across India and spending all that time and effort doing that. Do you think that, given sort of the decline of the Congress, over the past couple of decades, that there is a possibility that Rahul Gandhi's reimagination, and sort of juxtaposing him with Hindutva, offers a credible, not only a credible and more tolerant vision for India's democracy, but is it enough? Will it have enough momentum to seriously challenge the BJP anytime in the near future?
too early to say. He has certainly, Rahul, acquired a new stature. And this yatra has endowed him with some charisma and some natural authority. He may compete more with Modi on these fronts now. But Modi's power relies on other pillars, and we need to look at his hegemony in a larger perspective. First of all, the so-called media saturate the public sphere with his image. By contrast, the mainstream media superbly ignored the Bharat Jodo Yatra of Rahul Gandhi. Now, Yatra politics is all about publicity. It's largely based on publicity. If you do not show that on TV, you miss the target, or at least you partly miss the target. Secondly, Modi's political resilience is also due to the Sangh Parivar, and this is an organization Rahul misses, given the condition of the Congress party. And here there is a key question. In fact, three key questions. One, as the party elections, Congress party elections, reinvigorated the apparatus of the Congress? We don't know yet. Two, have the party cadres been galvanized by the Yatra? Because that was an opportunity for many Congress cadres to meet Rahul. Now they may think they have a leader, but we don't know for sure. And last but not least, have factions, one of the diseases of Congress, receded in the background at the state level? And we'll know more, we'll see that in the coming Karnataka, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh elections, because in the coming 7 or 8 months, we'll have 4 major elections where Congress is the main contender or in office. If Congress performs well in these key states, can it make a difference in 2024? This is, of course, the question you ask, in fact. And I would say, again, there'll be 3 problems to overcome. Again, the media. Election campaigns are so, I would say, importantly mediated by TV channels and others. And NDTV is now in the hands of a good friend, a colleague of Narendra Modi, Gautam Adani. That was the last TV channel with some independence. That's a real problem. Secondly, election campaigns are very expensive these days. BJP spent $3.5 billion last time, 2019, as much as all the other parties, largely because of oligarchs, because of crony capitalists, including Gautam Adani. If he's not the number one in terms of wealth anymore in Asia, is still quite affluent, and others are equally, almost equally affluent. So can Congress compete being poor by comparison? And third, as the opposition realized that it has to close ranks. The opposition parties are so divided. So many state parties are trying to play their own game. Will they join hands? Will they support Rahul Gandhi? The GDU of Nitish Kumar in Bihar, the SP of Akhilesh Yadav in Uttar Pradesh, the Trinamool Congress Party of Mamata Banerjee in West Bengal. Well, you name one state, you have a state leader who is not necessarily prepared to antagonize BJP because they fear retaliation as well. They don't know what could be the consequences of an open opposition. So these are the caveats. It might be a turning point, this yatra, but many ifs.
So a lot of moving parts and the complexity of the largest democracy in the world, I suppose. So now, lastly, let me ask you, in the context of great power competition, right, and how sort of the US has been engaging with India, particularly since the last decade or so, and this is a relationship that seems to be going from strength to strength, and in the context of sort of acrimony with China and that need compulsion to counterbalance China. Do you think that that relationship, because one notices, for instance, here in the US, US SURF, a government-mandated entity, being reluctant to name India as a country of particular concern. Well, I mean, the US SURF, notices it, but the State Department refuses to, categorize India as a country of particular concern. But there is growing sort of concern, regarding sort of the religious intolerance within India. So do you think America's engagement, with India, and because of those geostrategic compulsions, is it serving to curtail intolerance within India, sort of rein in, this the sort of ethno-majoritarianism, if you will, or is it enabling it?
Now, the West at large, and not only the US, but also Europe, is complacent with Modi's India, with the way, as you say, India is going the majoritarian way. And I think that's for two main reasons. One is, as you also say, it's the obsession of the West with the rise of China. And even if India is reluctant to take side, it should not consider from the Western point of view that to help China is in its interest. So even if the West cannot rely on India vis-a-vis China actively, because India tries not to antagonize China, at least India is not likely to get closer to China. And the Indo-Pacific strategy is all about that, to keep India and other countries which are not interested in taking side, ASEAN countries are not taking side either, but at least if they are engaged sufficiently actively by the West, they will not move closer to China. And secondly, trade relations influence the Western states' diplomacy a lot. These big deals, including arms deals, including sales of aircraft, dozens of Airbus, dozens of Boeings, these are very important variables. Till the West sees India as a big market, as a large country, it will not raise human rights related issues. And when it will, if there is a disaster, it will be probably too late for two reasons. It will have lost its credibility, and a point of no return might have been reached. The only factor that can probably make this state of thing changing is the diaspora factor. In UK, in the US, in Australia, in Canada, you see the Hindu-Muslim tensions also on the rise, as if India was exporting its own problems. And I think it's one of the reasons why some people are realizing that something may need to be done. First of all, domestically, to make sure that the most militant groups are taken care of, but possibly internationally, because the roots of the issues, the roots of the problems are in South Asia, not in the West originally. But that's I would say maybe not sufficiently important for changing the equation. And I don't see any reason, I mean, clear reason why the US and Europe would interfere with domestic politics in India today.
So you've given us plenty of food for thought, as they say, Christoph, and thank you so much for for taking the time to have this conversation.
You're most welcome. Thank you.